In the meantime, since mid-March, the office has looked a whole lot different, hasn't it? Because it's been more of a virtual workspace. And for management, it has been a paradigm shift from being able to, at times, maybe even micromanage to having to, I guess, extend a little bit of trust over the bandwidth. Joining us this morning is business strategist and workplace expert. She's worked with companies from coast to coast. We say good morning once again to Cheri Perry. Cheri, always great to have you on in Memphis. How are you?
Hey, doing great, Tim. Good morning.
So I guess with coronavirus and with now a lot of these meetings taking place for the workplace via WebEx, I guess via Zoom, and a lot of work being done from home, there's not a lot of direct contact of, let's take a look at this work or just or popping in the boss's office or vice versa. And how much should managers, since they're now at a distance, try to micromanage their remote teams?
Well, I'm not a big fan of micromanagement, and so I think that one of the things that you mentioned earlier was trust. We're having to use a lot more of that in the workplace today. But trust is something that is earned, and we earn that trust with really good, clear communication. We earn that trust with developing a reputation with the way that we show up and do our job. And so if you're the kind of staff member where they didn't have to worry about you when you were in the office, they're probably not really going to have to worry about you that much at home. Sure, you might need some extra coaching on how to handle a workplace, situation. It's a little different. But for the most part, people like to perform in a certain way. So if managers were having challenges with staff members before, naturally that's going to follow them home if they're working remotely. Does that make sense?
Sure. The geography doesn't paper over the cracks, basically.
That's exactly right. Exactly.
Yeah. So with these applications and having Zoom meetings, of course, comes technology, and with technology comes oftentimes webcams, and with that, is it ever okay to secretly spy on employees?
I think it's never okay to secretly, I love that word, secretly spy on employees. There's nothing wrong with having some measures in place to be able to track productivity. In fact, a good staff member is going to want to have some great tracking measures that they can themselves say, hey, listen, how did I do today? How many calls did I make? How much time did I spend doing this task or that task? And lots of times those kinds of tracking measures can really help improve productivity. But when you're talking about secretly spying on somebody, that is definitely not something, first of all, that in many cases is even legal. You definitely want to talk with your legal department about that. But people have the right to know if you're watching them. People have the right to know if you're monitoring them. And in a good managerial scenario, you use those management tools as a way to help somebody get better and rise to a challenge versus trying to maybe catch them doing something.
Cheri Perry joining us on Memphis Morning News. If you're getting your work done, if you're taking care of business, you're doing what you're supposed to do, you're meeting your benchmarks. Does it really matter where in the house you're doing it? I know a lot of people set up a designated office space, but if you're sitting out on the back porch with a glass of sweet tea, does it really matter where you're doing it? I'm guessing that answer might be more complicated than the simplicity of my question.
Love the question, love the sweet tea. I think that I've heard people ask the question about, well, if I'm sitting by the pool sipping a margarita, well, see, now we got a problem. So you want to really make sure that if you're doing something, if your work is the kind of work where you can comfortably sit by a pool and not have the sound of the, outside of the pool or the water splashing, whatever, interrupt what you're doing. I personally, as someone who manages the remote workforce, I don't have a problem with that. On the other hand, if you're easily distracted and, oh, look, there's a cute little squirrel tromping through the yard or whatever the scenario is, a designated space in your home may help you be more productive and stay on track. So again, we're right back to personal responsibility. Where is the best place for you to work? If it's by the pool, maybe it is. I don't know. But if it isn't, you've got to take personal responsibility and say, listen, how can I make sure that I'm giving my employer the most bang for their buck? Because right now, I mean, look around. People are having a hard time making ends meet, and you don't want to be the one that gets cut because you're not adding the maximum amount of value.
Cheri, that's a great strategy. Cheri Perry, always a pleasure to have you on Memphis Morning News. Please don't be a stranger. We appreciate your time, and in these ever-changing times, it's nice to have a perspective from a pro. Thank you so much.
You bet.